What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about it. And in this video, I want to go into very specific details of what happened, what actually happened at this family court trial that I was unlawfully dragged into and forced to go to. An ex-girlfriend, an unhinged ex-girlfriend and her psychotic lawyer dragged me through family court for like 2 years at this point on a restraining order application that was never signed. An applicant I was never married with, had children with, or lived with. A trial schedule endorsement form that was never filled out, served, and filed. One judge, Justice Martha Ann Tweety, who caused unnecessary and prejudiced adjournments leading up to this trial, eventually filled out that form, which she shouldn't have, because that is a counsel's job. An applicant, no trial should ever be scheduled without that form, and any lawyer will tell you that. That's Rule 17, Sub-Rule 11. And there were so many issues with this case that I endured, and I never thought I'd ever experience all the corruption I did experience. When you got judges filling out forms and then blocking out nearly 2 pages of transcripts, that's corruption. That is covering up potentially a major misconduct. That is one very fishy thing that happened in this process dealing with this court. And, this is, I'm convinced, I was dragged through Canada's most corrupted family court case in Canadian history. I was never married with, had children, or lived with this person. I never had any police history with this person. And the little bit we did have was about a week or two leading up to this illegal eviction I have that I've mentioned in a previous video. But what I want to get into in this video is I want to share with the public what actually happened at this trial and what these courts don't want the public to know. And it's just, it's really disturbing, and it's a disgrace to our justice system that my case got dragged through the courts the way it did, and it held up the court system for actual people who were married, who had children, who had legitimate reasons to fear for their safety. And I'm going to be honest, I honestly, I felt like I got ass raped behind those closed doors in this court, and I was told to shut my mouth and to never talk about this. And that's just the honest truth. It's very hard to talk about this topic in a calm manner without bashing anybody, and that's what I'm going to do to the best of my ability. But what I went through, I should have never went through. I lost 3 amazing jobs over this because I ultimately lost this restraining order trial, and because of that, it gave the applicant's lawyer, this psychotic, unhinged, incompetent lawyer, the impression that his materials were actually good and that he did a good job. It was far from it. He submitted this fraudulent bill of $160,000 where he admitted to paying $7,000, or his client did. He was awarded $60,000, a cost video, which I'll get into separately. And ultimately, 72 days after this cost order, this lawyer, John David Ekping-Young, ran to the courts and started a garnishment application with zero communication. I've tried to bring this up to the courts, and they refuse to do anything. This story that I'm about to get into, my experience with the Kitchener-Waterloo courthouse, is a perfect example of how broken and corrupted our family courts are, and the associated parties. This is a court I never had any business ever being in, let alone a trial. So I got dragged through family court for, 3 years on a restraining order application that was never signed. Justice Martha Ann Tweety was like the managing judge in this case, and she caused 18 months of unnecessary and prejudiced adjournments. The applicant and her lawyer either never showed up, never filled out forms, sent students, and they never even filled out their trial schedule endorsement form, which is required by law for parties, that they must fill out, serve, and file this form before any trial is scheduled. And you know what? That was never done. Justice Tweety took it upon herself, and this is why I say this trial was rigged, because she filled out the trial schedule endorsement form and then submitted it. And the lawyer, John David Ekping-Young, he never even filed it with the court. So the trial coordinator's office scheduled a trial without the main form that is required. So here I am, dragged through family court on a restraining order application that was never signed, that never had any merit, and a trial schedule endorsement form that the lawyer never filled out, a judge did, and it was never filed with the court. You guys have probably seen in my previous video that Justice Tweety blocked out nearly 2 pages of transcripts to cover up a serious misconduct, because she's the one who filled out that form and she shouldn't have. I reached out to the Canadian Judicial Council, which I'll be doing a separate video about, and how broken and corrupted their screening officers are. And the Minister of Justice won't even acknowledge my emails. He has his foot soldiers at the Ministry Attorney General responding to me and refusing to have a conversation with me, clearly just to address the corruption that's going on in our government. So, this video, I'm going to get into what actually happened at the trial that the courts completely covered up. And I think you guys are going to be completely shocked on what this court did to me, how bad they railroaded me, how badly they ruined my financial situation. They ruined 3 jobs because of this family court, and there needs to be accountability. This lawyer, John David Ekping-Young, lied to several judges, including to Justice Madsen I had to speak to in January 2024. And, so ultimately, we get thrown into this trial with 1 day's notice. February 6th, I was told that the trial would be the 7th and the 8th. So we go to this trial. At that trial, it's the regional senior judge, Justice Michael Gibson, who's overseeing this trial. Before, I guess what happened was I had subpoenaed to the Waterloo Region Police, the ones who wrote the report when the applicant, this unhinged girlfriend, who admitted to the police I was renting her basement, I was paying rent, she applied to the landlord-tenant board for an eviction application. I subpoenaed those police officers whose name was on that report, and the Waterloo Region Police had their legal representative, I'm not sure if I have the right name, but I want to say Emily Stone. And she showed up that day, and she was just opposing it right from the get-go, that the officers shouldn't be there, and there wasn't enough notice. And there wasn't enough notice, because I think you have to give them like a week or 2 notice. And how do you do that when the Kitchener-Waterloo Family Court schedules a trial and gives me 1 day notice? Not sure how that happened, but there's so many rules that were ignored throughout this case, and that really disturbing. So we get before Justice Michael Gibson, and I bring it to his attention that the trial schedule endorsement form was never served or filed by the applicant. And he told me, well, we're here now, we're going to deal with this. Well, I thought that was really unfair, and I thought that was prejudice. And then I later find out the form was never even filed with the court. So I'm not, again, what's the point of having rules and laws if we're not going to abide by them and follow them? Especially judges. There's rules. And when a self-represent party brings that up and they do nothing about it, it's a handicap match. It's just an unfair handicap match. So the judge made the trial proceed. Wasn't happy about that. So I was forced to go to this trial, and the materials I submitted, I busted my ass off, and I'm so proud of those materials. I can tell you right now, any lawyer that if I was to retain a lawyer from start to that trial and to even on, they would charge well over $160,000. An amount of money that John David Ekping-Young submitted in a fraudulent bill to this judge, Justice Michael Gibson, who surprisingly entertained it and later ordered me costs off of that fraudulent bill. So this was just a straight up rigged trial for these things happening. Okay, it was a 2-day trial. I spoke for maybe an hour and a half. John David Ekping-Young rambled on, asked repetitive questions for about 8 hours. At one point, Justice Gibson told him to stop asking repetitive questions. There were two witnesses there that showed up at this trial, Kim Bornerick and Mark Van Leuven. These two witnesses were caught lying. So what happened was with Kim Bornerick, she got up. She was being asked questions. Again, this is a trial I never even wanted to attend. It was either given to extortion or go to this trial. There was one chance I had to get out of this, and looking back, I would have, but that's when a judge told them that, and this was in Justice McLeod in August of 2023, that they had no case and they should reconsider what they're doing. And they sent me a peace bond the following day. And it's like, I didn't want to agree to any of these terms. The terms they had in that peace bond, the terms they had in this restraining order application were just straight up bullshit. There was no police history with this person. There was no domestic issues, okay? Never lived with her, never had children, never married with this person. What the hell am I doing in family court? And I didn't want to give into these terms. I asked them to simply just drop the whole thing. There's nothing to fear about anything I've ever done. This was just straight up slander and defamation, what they did to me. And, so I had to go to this trial. Kim Borner gets up. She was caught reading notes from a notepad, okay? She got caught lying. Her daughter, Katarina Bornerick, was renting the applicant's basement for 1 year. And on December 9th, 2022, she moved out. The applicant, her witnesses at the landlord-tenant board, this witness, Kim Bornerick, straight up lied and said that her daughter never lived there. And again, I wish we would all just stop playing games and have this investigated to see that the applicant and Kim Bornerick exchanged money, $1,400 every month. And we can stop playing this game, this guessing game. But this is the problem. The courts are aiding and abetting this applicant, and it's obviously frustrating. So Kim Bornerick sent money to the applicant, $1,400 for 1 year. She paid for rent. Her daughter lived there. It was a rental unit. An ex-girlfriend did a solid and let me move into this rental unit when she moved out. This applicant admitted Kim Bornerick admitted that John David Ekping-Young coached her 1 day before. And that's when Ekping-Young's hands went up on his head with his mouth wide open in shock. Can't believe she admitted that. The applicant had a doctor's note where she could read notes from a notepad, okay? And then Mark Van Leuven made a perjury statement saying that he was a witness to hundreds of harassing text messages, but then when asked to give one example, he couldn't give one. So this was the bullshit that I was up against. And you think that would be enough for this judge, Justice Michael Gibson, to kind of side with it. And he never did. He was against me. You read this, when I get into this endorsement, he was just straight up against me, and he did not like me. I had nothing but respect for this judge. And I got railroaded so bad. So this was some of the crap I was up against. And then another thing was the applicant submitted this fraudulent home insurance claim where she was paid $10,000 for a broken door. She made a bunch of claims about all this damage to the property, and there was like a couple pictures. There was a small little dent in the floor. There was a hinge off a door removed. That document I'm going to share with you guys, okay? It's 1 page. I believe it's 9 out of 12 or whatever it is. This person admitted to home insurance fraud over $5,000, and the Cambridge-Waterloo police refused to investigate, and this Kitchener-Waterloo courthouse refused to question her about this. Again, this was nothing but a handicap match. And I broke a $500 door. So how did this person get a $10,000 check? No one's questioned it. At one point, Justice Gibson gave Ekping-Young shit and raised his voice because Ekping-Young submitted a document that he had signed and commissioned without his client's signature. And you know what? Ekping-Young's done this about 6 times. And I have all the documents. So if anyone wants to ever see them or question, the honesty about this video, because again, I got nothing to prove, to mislead or lie or to bash anybody. Justice Gibson gave shit to Ekman Young for this document. On that document was a bunch of bullshit numbers of these alleged payments from his applicant to the lawyer. Money that was never paid, except for this family court matter. They admitted to paying a $7,000 block fee for this family court matter. Then this incompetent, psychotic, unhinged lawyer foolishly submitted a fraudulent bill of $160,000 to the same judge, Justice Michael Gibson, who he later entertained, and ordered me to pay $60,000. You know, that's a fraudulent bill. Justice Gibson entertained that fraudulent bill when I lost his trial. He ordered me to pay $60,000 3 days after my 40th birthday. In May of 2024, Canada's inflation rate was at its highest. It was at 2.9. You know, a loaf of bread is like $5, $10. Why would a judge order me to pay $60,000? Money that was never exchanged hands, hours that was fraud, that was straight up fraud. This is what I'm talking about when I feel like I got ass raped in that courtroom behind closed doors. And that's just the God's honest truth of what it felt like when what actually happened by myself with this judge and this lawyer and these witnesses, what was said and what was on paper. In fact, this judge never wanted to release the audio recordings because his endorsement is extremely contradictive for the most part for what happened in that courtroom. And all this judge did was take out a hard-working electrician who was paying top tax dollars to the community and paying for these courts and just to put me out of commission at a point I don't think I'll ever be able to get back where I was. So orders me to pay $60,000 at the highest inflation that Canada's seen in 2024. I believe this judge made this decision off of two things. So there was a piece of evidence at that trial that was heard, and it was a recorded conversation between me and the applicant. When I was living in the basement, the applicant called me up, and she started going off on me and asking me when I was moving out. And I said, I'm doing my best. Considering the circumstances and my schedule and everything, I think I was even looking at places that day. She gets me all riled up. She starts talking all this shit. And at this point, where she gets me all riled up to a certain point, she starts recording me where I didn't know. So halfway through the conversation, she starts recording me. I can tell you this, from most of the lawyers I talk to, that from what I've gathered, about 80% of judges do not accept audio recordings where one party is not aware of, where the other party has recorded it halfway through an incident. This judge, I'm convinced that this judge made his decision, and it says in his endorsement, I was yelling and screaming. At one point I was. I opposed that audio recording, obviously, because it wasn't like, well, how did it start? How did it finish? It was like midway through point where this person was provoking me, was yelling and screaming at me. And then when she got me going, she recorded me. And then she used it as evidence. Also, too, after that trial, when the judge gave a decision, I wrote him a letter expressing how unhappy I was about it. And I later found out, I think it's Rule 2.2 about communication. You're not allowed to directly communicate with a judge. And I didn't know that. And this judge accepted that letter. His assistant accepted it. No one ever told me I can't send that letter. So Justice Gibson read this letter, and I believe he made his decision off that $60,000 because of the audio recording, well, the restraining order, the permanent maximum restraining order that anyone can ever get was from that audio recording, and then that letter I sent him that technically he shouldn't even opened up or received. I was never married with the applicant, never had children. I never lived with her. Okay, she withheld the police report for 2 years that she wrote to the police admitting the living situation. Okay, it was either given to extortion or go to a trial, an unfair trial. a rigged trial. You got judges filling out endorsement form, filling out trial schedule endorsement form, blocking out transcripts. You bring it to the trial judge's attention. He says, oh, well, we're here now. We're going to deal with it. Well, again, what's the point of having rules if parties aren't going to abide by it, if court staff isn't going to abide by it, if judges aren't going to abide by it? Okay? That trial coordinator's office scheduled the trial, and I believe it was Sloan French, because of that one incident when I went up to the courthouse because they ignored me for, 6 weeks? They couldn't answer their emails. I had to go up there and talk to them in person, because that's some of the ongoing crap I was dealing with. This handicap match, because someone's, I believe, is upstairs, being a puppet master, instructing them what to do specifically with me. And that's when Sloan French went off on me when I went up and yelled, "Security! Help! Help! Get them out!" Security. I asked, why did she schedule the trial? Knowing that it's basic rules, okay? Because she told me, Justice Tweety told her to schedule it. Well, this coordinator's office should have known better not to schedule that trial, and they did it anyways. And then you guys wonder why I'm unhappy and I'm frustrated and I'm making these videos, because you know what? It's in the public's best interest to know what happened to me at this rigged family court trial, and it's just insane. I had to wait 7 weeks for Justice Gibson's decision. That decision could have easily been made in 7 minutes. There was no need to stretch it out for 7 weeks, okay? And they're doing the same thing to me again, where I got unlawfully dragged to the same courthouse because this lawyer and his unhinged client are trying to label me a fictitious litigant over 2 small claim matters, the landlord-tenant and an appeal. And which will be a whole another video into that. Again, that happened, March 21st, 2025? My birthday's approaching in a week. What are they going to do? They're going to give their decision a before or after, like they did with that $60,000 court order? I can't wait to get into that and share all that, what happened with that case. So I got this endorsement. I got Justice Michael Gibson's endorsement, and there's a lot of concerning things in here that I clearly don't agree with. There's statements in this endorsement that cannot be backed up by any evidence or facts submitted. And I submitted an appeal to the Court of Appeal, and the same thing. I'm going to be doing a separate video on me dealing with that. And you guys are just going to be just in shock what they did at that court. And I would just steer clear from all these courts, considering what I went through. So this endorsement, number 4, and I'll share this with you guys. So the endorsement, right, the overview, it goes down. So the overview, number 4. This judge said that temporary restraining orders have previously been made against the respondent, me, in this matter by Justice Salone, Justice Walters, and Justice Bingham. No, they didn't. These 3 judges never did that. It was only Justice Bingham on May 27th, 2022, one day before my birthday. They scheduled this temporary restraining order to see to put one in place. Right? So no, 3 judges didn't give me a restraining order. It was just one. Number 7, under the law, Section 46 of the Family Law provides a restraining order 1. An application, the court may order an intern or final restraining order against a person described as subsection 2 if the applicant has reasonable grounds to fear for his or her safety or for the safety of any child or his or her lawful custody. Same 2. A restraining order under subsection 1 may be made against a spouse or former spouse of the applicant or a person other than a spouse of the applicant if the person is cohabitating with the applicant or cohabitated with the applicant for any period of time. Number 3, a restraining order made under subsection 1 shall be in the form prescribed by the rules of the court and contain one or more of the following provisions the court considers appropriate. So the judge is saying that we cohabitated. We never cohabitated. And there was a police report that was on case lines that the applicant submitted that I asked this judge to review. And he didn't review it. And yet he's sitting here saying I cohabitated when I never did. I rented the basement. Bottom line. Okay? And then number 10. So the issues. Okay? The issues before the court are: does the applicant have legitimate and reasonable grounds to fear for his or own safety? 2, should a permanent restraining order be issued against the respondent? So 11. So under analyst, number 11. The applicant gave evidence on the hearing. I found her to be generally credible witness, and I believe her account of what transpired between the parties. The respondent also gave evidence on the hearing. I did not find him not to be a credible witness. He was frequently obfuscating and evasive in his answers to questions and engaged in gratuitous and ominous attacks on the applicant's counsel. I do not believe much of his account regarding the nature of the relationship between the parties and what transpired between them. I also do not believe his account of the interactions between the parties during the critical time of December 2021 and April 2022. Right? So he didn't believe me, is what he's saying. And this is what I didn't agree with. Because you know what? They were caught lying. They submitted fraudulent documents. The applicant needed a doctor's note, and she asked for it at the last minute so she could read all her coached stuff, just like how Kim Bornerick was coached and wrote it down and sat there, and I caught her reading from a notepad, and it was brought up. She admitted to being coached by the lawyer. Mark Van Loven committed perjury and made all these bogus statements of witnessing hundreds of harassing text messages, but yet he couldn't give one example. And then the judge didn't believe me. This is a court I had absolutely no business ever being in. The restraining order application was never signed. The trial schedule endorsement form was never filled out, served, and filed, which is a basic rule that the regional judge should know. And he still let this trial commence. I was respectful to this judge when I was referencing all of my stuff, the numbers of my pages. I was so organized, where John David Ekping-Young, he didn't know what the hell he was doing. And he rambled on for 8 hours at that trial. And the judge gave him shit for commissioning a document without his client's signature. And then he submitted a fraudulent bill of $160,000. This is what I'm talking about. I am dealing with Canada's most corrupted family court case in Canadian history. Okay? And I'm frustrated. 13. So here the judge makes a bunch of statements where I'm just going to call out and I'm going to say, these statements are misleading and they're contradictory to the facts that were in the evidence submitted, okay? Like I said, and I'm going to get into this, this judge said I called her, I emailed her, I breached my temporary restraining order, I was not a tenant. None of these things ever happened, okay? So 13. This judge called me a common law spouse in the applicant's home. Notwithstanding they broke up and reunited several times, the parties lived together as common law spouses in the applicant's home. No, we did not. Common law spouse are two different things. A spouse is someone who is married. A common law is someone in Ontario who's lived together with someone over 6 years. This is what I mean, right? They slept in the same bed for much of the relationship. Yeah, when I didn't move in, I had my own basement apartment, my own separate entrance. I never slept with this woman, maybe once or twice, okay? That doesn't mean we're common law. That doesn't mean we're spouses. Oh, we traveled to the Bahamas. Yeah, in 2019, in 2018 or 2019, and then 2020, way before I moved in. He gives us background information of when we actually did date, about 2 years before this. Okay. The respondent agreed to give the applicant $750 a month when he moved back in on December 9, 2021. The money was intended to be put towards household living expenses because he was once living there again. I never moved in there at any other point. Okay? I never lived there at any other point. And $750, you actually think the utility bill are going to increase that much? This is what they tried to tell the courts, that my rent money was going to the increase of utilities and food. I had my own unit. I was a strict vegetarian vegan at the time. I had my own fridge. I had my own diet. You know, it was not properly characterized as rent. I had sent email transfers and I put it was rent. And this judge seen that was part of my materials. Mr. Dobson did not give the applicant any money in March or April because I was trying to move out and she told me not to. The relationship broke down. It broke down before I moved in. She asked me to leave but would not. I was trying to leave. She was subject to yelling, screaming, and swearing. And that's what I was telling you guys about that audio recording in February 2022 when she called me up from the basement, got me all riled up, and then at the peak of it, she recorded me. She was yelling and screaming at me, but she never recorded that. She moved out on March 8, 2022. She never moved out because fears of her own safety. There was nothing to fear of. I was trying to move out. This is how fucking retarded this case is. Mr. Dobson did not move out until April 7th, 2022. 90% of my items were packed up in the beginning of March. I was trying to move out. This woman and her lawyer made it impossible and extremely uncomfortable for me, which he admitted in an email to her. He practically staged this whole thing. This lawyer interfered. And I was trying to move out. During this period, Mr. Dobson urinated on the outside grounds of her property and spewed trash outside. Okay? I urinated the day when I got illegally evicted because I drove from Toronto to Cambridge. And it was like I was in panic trying to get up there because all my shit was on the front lawn. I peed behind a shed. What's the big deal about that? There's nothing. The judge is trying to make this sound like she had a fear for her life because I peed on a shed and because I spewed trash everywhere. There's nothing violent about that, okay? It was a mistake about the trash being missed the garbage once and I peed on a shed. Okay? During this period, okay, I urinated. He sent a threatening email stating, "You have no idea what I'm capable of." So this is another major issue with this whole case. This is the Kitchener's top judge saying, I sent her an email. You know what? I never sent her an email. She sent herself an email. And I've showed that in a previous video. It was an exhibit. She had copy-pasted a portion of an email I sent to her lawyer. She sent it from one email to another email. And this judge is saying, I sent those emails. The respondent was not a tenant. The parties were cohabitating in a spousal relationship. Again, she was never my spouse. We were not cohabitating. I had the whole basement to myself, a separate entrance, a kitchen, a bathroom, laundry, my own bedroom, my own bed. You name it, I had my own fucking unit down there. And part of my language, but it is very upsetting reading this stuff that a top judge wrote that is not true. And there was that police report that Justice Gibson would have seen on case lines that the applicant withheld for 2 years. Again, this was nothing but an unfair handicap match, dealing with this court, dealing with this applicant, and dealing with the lawyer. The lawyer didn't do his job. He didn't even fill out the forms. He never, you know what I mean? It was just an absolute shit show. The respondent has breached his previous temporary restraining order by personally serving her with documents and telephoning her. You know, I never breached my temporary restraining order. I never telephoned her. I served her small claims documents in a Kitchener courthouse because her lawyer was always late and never showed up. There was nothing wrong about that. I never breached a temporary restraining order. I was never warned. I was never charged. So why would a judge put that on paper? All this is doing is railroading me for any other judge I go before in the future because they're going to see this nice little organized written endorsement that is not true. Writing on this endorsement that I telephoned her, I never called her once. She tried to play this game and show these phony, this phone call history of these private numbers and saying that I called them. I never called her. I provided my telephone history to prove I never made those calls. And if you know what, if you guys were to hear this audio recording at the trial, she admitted she never answered those calls. So this is why I'm frustrated. You got this judge saying these things on paper that never happened. I find the applicant has legitimate and reasonable grounds to fear for her safety from the respondent, that this is manifest on both subjective and objective basis. The respondent has demonstrated a lengthy period of harassment or irresponsible impulsive behavior with the objective of harassing or distressing the applicant. The conduct complained has been persistent and there is reasonable expectation that it will continue without the court involvement. This is absolutely bullshit. There was never anything that I did that I harassed this person. They have been nothing but harassing me with this meritless application that they didn't even sign. And this judge gave me a maximum lifetime restraining order of 500 meters to not come within the applicant. At this trial, the applicant admitted to frequenting several businesses in Burlington. Okay? All this judge did was give this person a piece of paper to torment me, to harass me, and to abuse me. Right? That's what they did. That's what this courthouse did to me. And it's in the public's best interest that I share this information. This judge also referenced 3 cases in this materials. Fuda versus Fuda, 2011. VMY versus SHG, 2019. And Purewell and Purewell. None of these cases referenced in this restraining order endorsement and the cost endorsement are relative to this case. These cases are all married, they have children, they live together. I never did. I am trying to get in contact with this judge to send him a letter to ask him to reconsider what he's done, because this lawyer, John David Ekping-Young, has been nothing but harassing me, trying to put me in contempt over a bunch of bullshit that he's made up and that he's gaslit. And I'm going to be doing a separate video on those materials that he sent me on 3 different occasions. And he knows about this whole tragedy situation with my mother that I had brought him up to, that has seriously affected my life, that I will be getting into a video on that as well. This asshole lawyer served me on my mother's birthday, and he served me 3 days on the 3rd time before Mother's Day, just trying to get under my skin. The Law Society refused to do anything about this lawyer. This courthouse gave this lawyer a platform, a clear canvas, just to annihilate me for no good reason. This applicant never had any reason to fear for her safety. I was trying to move out of her basement. They submitted fraudulent documents. Their witnesses got caught lying. Okay? The lawyers submitted documents that he signed that weren't commissioned. Okay? My materials, I'm going to eventually show you guys one day. Like, again, an actual lawyer who I think honestly got his credentials, and I think we need to investigate John David Ekping-Young, where he went to school, when he challenged it. It's very suspicious. A real lawyer would have charged me $160,000. Okay, this is Canada's most corrupted family court case in Canadian history, and I want the public to know, and I just wish the main media would show some light on this story. Because if this happened to me, how many other Canadians have this happened to? You know, my case ate up all this valuable time in the Kitchener family courthouse when there was actual real cases that needed time, and they couldn't get it because you have judges like Justice Martha Ann Tweety who caused unnecessary and prejudiced adjournments. And then at one point, 18 months in, has stepped out of her role of a judge, of acting impartial, and filled out that trial schedule endorsement form, and then later on refused to release the audio recording, and then blocked out nearly 2 pages of transcripts because she is covering up a serious misconduct, potentially, and it needs to be investigated. This is my life now. Sharing what the events that's happened to in my life with the public, you guys. in a very factual, and I try to do it my best in a very calm manner. But you honestly got to have rocks in your head to be surprised that I'm upset. And honestly, I'm doing my best to hold my composure. And everything I talk about is factual. And I'm not here to mislead. And there needs to be a serious reform. And this is another perfect example why we need cameras in courtrooms. And why the public should have access to the audio recordings and the video recordings of these cases. Because when you've got judges putting stuff on endorsements like this, and they can't be backed up by any evidence, this is a major stain on my life. Now, judges, this is going to hurt me in my future. Judges are going to look at this and be like, oh, Mr. Dobson, he's unhinged. Oh, he harassed, he breached his temporary restraining order. No, I didn't. Oh, he sent her an email. No, I didn't. Oh, he called her. No, I didn't. Oh, he was not a tenant. Yes, I was. A police report can back that up that the Waterloo Region Police opposed to have their officers subpoenaed. Who wrote that? That police report was on case lines. These court staff aided and abetted this case. That trial coordinator's office scheduled a trial when it's in their basic training that they should be checking what forms are filed. And if that trial schedule endorsement form isn't filed with the court, you do not schedule a trial. They did not anticipate any of this was going to happen. And all I'm asking really from this courthouse is to fix this mess. It's just to fix it. Get rid of this restraining order, because you're just giving them a piece of paper to torment, abuse, and harass, and get rid of these court costs. My bank accounts are still frozen to this date. This lawyer refuses to accept a payment plan. And I may have to claim bankruptcy because of what this Kitchener courthouse allowed John David Ekping-Young and his client to get away with. There's a major problem in our courts system. And judges seem to be immune, which they practically are, because you've got this broken and biased Canadian Judicial Council who refuses to act adequately and fairly and dismiss complaints. And when you guys see the responses I've got from them, it will confirm how broken and biased and corrupted those screening officers are. And why wouldn't the Minister of Justice want to talk to me about these things, right? Because it's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a big problem. So it's in their best interest not even to talk to me. And I will be getting a video with my correspondence with the Department of Justice and this Attorney General that's trying to respond on his behalf. And you know, we are us as Canadian taxpayers, we're paying for all this. We're paying for all this mess. And what are they doing? But from these examples, they're abusing their powers. And they're getting paid hundreds and thousands of dollars to sometimes screw around and get away with it. This has seriously affected my mental health. And I can see why men's mental health is as bad as it is. And why the suicide rate is so bad. And how do we stop that? How do we stop that? Let's be honest. Well, when you got public servants, when they stop fucking around and abusing their roles and abusing their salaries and handling cases the way they did, that's going to be a start. So why don't we start there? Why doesn't this case get investigated? The major media outlets won't touch this. And you know what? I will be doing a video on highlighting my attempts reaching out to the media and trying to get this story out there. Because it's in the public's best interest to know this, and they're trying to keep this isolated. Guys, I need your help growing this channel, and I would really appreciate it if you appreciate me sharing my life story in an honest and factual manner. That if you guys could please subscribe, share, like, and comment this channel. Because I can't do this without you guys and without your support. And I haven't even scratched the surface of some of the crap that I've dealt with. I'm just getting started. And I just want to share it with everybody. I don't trust the police. I don't trust judges. I don't trust crown attorneys. And no, I shouldn't say I don't trust judges, because there has been a few that have been really good. Justice Standrick was good. Justice Walters was good. Justice McLeod was good. Those are the couple I can think off top. The other ones, it just does not seem fair. It seems impartial. There's something going on. It almost seems like there's some influence in these chambers, because it all comes down to this family court matter and what this judge saw and then what he put on paper. Almost two opposite things. Excuse me. So I'm going to leave the video with that right there. This has been another video from Let's Talk About It. And this has been the honest truth and the information about this trial that the public would never know if I don't honestly share. And that's all I'm here to do. I want to share the truth. So thank you guys for watching.